It was supposed to be a routine briefing. A televised statement by the Ministry of Defense, broadcast nationwide, meant to update the public on internal military cohesion. But halfway through the transmission, everything shifted. General Malik Diarra, polished, theatrical, raised a folder and looked straight into the camera. "We regret to inform the nation that Captain Ibrahim Traoré is under investigation for leaking classified information, violating chain of command, and inciting unrest among junior officers." A beat of silence. Then the bomb. Effective immediately, he is stripped of all command privileges and reassigned to indefinite administrative holding. The screen flashed with still images, grainy photos of Traoré in villages, cropped and captioned to look suspicious. Then a soundbite, distorted, made to sound like he'd said something treasonous. The public gasped. Social media lit up. News anchors speculated. Had the promising young captain gone rogue? Officers were instructed not to speak about it. Traoré himself? He was watching from a rural health post, treating wounded civilians from a recent ambush. No TV, just the echo of stunned silence from a passing soldier with a radio. He didn't react, didn't rage, just nodded once, and tightened the bandage he was wrapping on a child's leg. He knew what had happened. They couldn't defeat him in the field. They couldn't silence his reports. So they tried something older, dirtier. They tried to make him a traitor. Erase his truth with a louder lie. That night, as rumors spread and former allies began distancing themselves, Traoré sat by a campfire with 5 village elders and 3 teenage orphans who'd lost their parents in the fighting. They didn't ask if the news was true. They didn't care about press statements or rank. One elder handed him tea and said, "You don't need a title, son. You need only to keep walking." And he did. But this time he wasn't just gathering stories or evidence. He was preparing for something else. Not a rebellion, not revenge, a broadcast. His. He didn't call a press conference. He called a gathering. In a half-collapsed schoolhouse, deep in the northern province, Traoré met with village chiefs, wounded fighters, teachers, nurses, and 3 radio technicians who'd been fired for amplifying dangerous speech. They had old equipment, dusty wires, rusted transmitters, one generator that coughed more than it ran. But they had something else too, a forgotten frequency. "You want a station?" one of the techs asked. "No," Traoré said. "I want a voice, unfiltered, undistorted, and loud enough for the capital to hear." They got to work. For 2 weeks, Traoré traveled from town to town, gathering testimonies. Soldiers who'd been bribed to stay silent, villagers who saw relief trucks turned away, women who buried their dead, then were blamed for harboring enemies. He recorded them all, not edited, not polished, raw, real. Meanwhile, back in Ouagadougou, General Diarra tightened control. Officers were made to sign loyalty pledges. Phones were confiscated inside command centers. Civilian reporters were arrested for disinformation. And yet, Traoré's name kept showing up, spray-painted on walls, whispered in markets. "IT speaks soon." One night, a military patrol discovered a crate buried outside the city walls. Inside, 20 USB drives, labeled "For Your Conscience." Each contained audio files, testimonies, dates, names, places, and a note. "If you believe the lie, hear the truth." In the schoolhouse, the radio team counted down. The generator sputtered. Cables hissed. The signal flickered. And then, static turned into voice. "This is Captain Ibrahim Traoré. You may have heard what they said about me. Tonight, I'll let the people speak instead." What followed wasn't a speech. It was a symphony of the silenced. One by one, voices filled the airwaves. Not angry, just tired. Tired of being ignored, blamed, lied to. And across the country, people listened. Some stopped eating. Others pulled their children closer. Some wept. Because for the first time, they recognized themselves in the broadcast. Not as statistics, as citizens. General Diarra ordered signal jammers deployed, but by then, it was too late. The files were already spreading. By Bluetooth, by memory card, by word of mouth. And in every copy, at the end, Traoré's voice asked one question. Who benefits from your silence? By sunrise, the regime was scrambling. Headlines were pulled. Radio stations were warned. Journalists were detained without explanation. But none of it mattered. Because truth wasn't living in studios anymore. It was living in buses, in barbershops, in teenage phones and grandmother whispers. And most dangerously, it was living in the barracks. A young lieutenant in the capital found one of the drives tucked beneath his meal tray. He played it behind locked doors. He heard an old farmer recount how government trucks drove past his burning fields and never returned. He heard a medic describe how wounded villagers were labeled collateral and left for dead. He heard a voice, Traoré's voice, say, "They silenced me, but not us." The lieutenant didn't cry. He just opened his closet, took out his uniform, and folded it. General Diarra, meanwhile, was losing grip. His morning briefing turned into a shouting match. How is he still broadcasting? He's not. The people are. Even his closest advisors grew cautious. Some refused eye contact. Others stopped showing up. It wasn't fear of punishment. It was fear of truth. And truth was viral. In marketplaces, sellers played the recordings on loop. In mosques, imams quoted the testimonies during Friday sermons. In universities, students held secret listening circles. Each time they ended the same way. Silence. Not because they had no words, because the words had hit too hard. Diarra authorized a counter-broadcast. A forced national clarification aired that evening. He called Traoré a rogue actor with foreign sympathies. He accused him of destabilizing progress. But the people weren't listening anymore. They were comparing. His speech was clean, rehearsed, empty. Traoré's was messy, human, and that was enough. Even within the military, things began to fracture. In the Southern Division, a captain refused to obey an arrest order for suspected traitors. He said simply, "I will not cage a man for telling the truth." 2 more officers backed him, then 7, then an entire brigade. Lost contact. Outside the capital, graffiti bloomed faster than it could be painted over. Our voices are not crimes. Traoré told the truth. Who lied? Silence is the last thing they control. Inside the ministry, Diarra slammed a fist on the table. He wasn't losing control of weapons, or land, or money. He was losing control of the story. And without the story, he was just a man in a uniform, begging people not to listen. The final blow didn't come from a bullet. It came from a stage. A rickety wooden platform built in the heart of the capital's public square, once called Unity Plaza, now unofficially renamed by locals as the Listening Ground. No one announced the gathering. No police blocked the roads. No general gave permission. But they came. Thousands, old and young, soldiers and farmers. They came holding phones, notebooks, speakers, and each other. And at the center stood one microphone. Waiting. When Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, the crowd didn't cheer. They didn't chant. They just fell silent. the kind of silence no regime can command, the kind earned. He spoke softly. No dramatic pause, no slogans, no rehearsed applause lines. "I was accused on national television," he said. "So let me answer in the presence of the nation." He held up a stack of papers, the original orders he'd written, audio files, testimonies, photos, maps, receipts, evidence of negligence, corruption, and betrayal, signed and sealed by the very people who called him a traitor. And then he said, "They use their microphones to lie. I use mine to amplify yours." In the crowd, a mother began to weep. A soldier removed his beret and placed it on the ground. A teenager whispered, "He never stopped being one of us." Back in the ministry, General Diarra watched from a secure room. He saw the crowd. He heard the silence. He turned off the screen. And for the first time in decades, the Ministry of Defense issued a statement not to dismiss rumors, but to resign. Diarra and 5 senior officers stepped down. Some fled. Others were summoned to tribunals, but none were missed. The new government wasn't formed with gunfire. It was written on paper, signed in ink, and carried by hands that had once held rifles. Traoré never asked to be called president. He called himself caretaker of the voice. His first decree? No statement shall be aired in this nation unless the people are allowed to answer it. And in the archives of the new state broadcaster, there is a permanent exhibit. A simple microphone placed under glass. The plaque beneath reads, "Used once to silence a man. Now, it belongs to everyone. Why